David Wolfe, it's an honor. Great to have you on the show. How are
Thank
you?
you. I'm the best ever. I just literally maybe 10 minutes ago repotted a plant out of the greenhouse and put it on my little work table out there. So I've been really into the farming and gardening the last 3 months.
Beautiful. And where are you? You're in Canada?
I'm in Ontario, Canada.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ontario is dear to my heart. I spent a few years in Northern Ontario and Toronto a bit as well. I love it there.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm in Northern Ontario. So we're we don't see people wearing masks, and it's very rare that we see stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so that's been interesting. So I've been hearing reports of like, here's what it's like in LA, and 98% of the people wearing masks. I've just been like, whoa, what a trip.
Yeah, same here in Perth. We're kind of on the periphery of it. Things have opened up a lot, and it's we were meant to be in LA during this whole period, and we're so grateful we're not. At the same time, we're getting reports from dear friends there, and what a trip. I mean, I'd love to start the conversation just hearing I mean, you're not deep in the happenings of it, being in Northern Ontario, but what are your observations of what's going on globally right now?
Well, I've been in it hardcore because every day on my Telegram page, I'm publishing a news feed. So it's kind of like the old Facebook days, when you could just do whatever you wanted on Facebook. It's kind of like that. It's kind of fun because
Yeah,
Telegram's uncensored.
yeah, it's
So I'm
great. I've
having
been
a
keeping an eye on it.
blast.
It's awesome.
Okay, so yeah, so you've been
Yeah.
keeping an eye on it. So I've,
Hmm.
I've been having a blast just kind of keeping up with the headlines around the world and what's been going on, and getting up at, like, this morning I got up at 5. Usually I'm getting up at like 5 or 5:30, or sometimes even earlier, sometimes even 2 or 3, and just powering through. And it's so good for me to be at home. I've been on the road for 26 straight years, so it's been awesome. So
Hmm.
this whole thing for me, the whole dilemma of the world, it's basically a worldwide takeover maneuver by big pharma. Um, for me, it's been actually great because I've been trying to get this message out my whole career
Right.
about the medical tyranny. This is not something new for me. It's been going on my whole life, all our lives. And so it just put a spotlight on the area that I've been focusing on. So actually it's been great in that sense. I mean, it's bad news, but in a way it's good news, because if we don't get over this, I call it medical scientism, which is that it's designed to look like science. It's marketed just like science, but when you actually look underneath the covers behind the curtain, there's no science there.
Right.
And so it's been interesting. This is what I've been dealing with my whole career, and I
Mm.
was attacked, crucified for decades for it. But now people are suddenly going, they all came back. It's so funny,
Mm.
man. They all came back.
And how, speaking of that, and the whole censorship trip, and you being really at the top of the wellness game, so to speak, I'd love to hear of your journey over the decades of being at the forefront of all this and getting flack, getting kickback, and how are you feeling, and just sharing of your journey over the years and where you're at right now. And I mean, you're still as vocal as ever, but how are you navigating that censorship game?
You look at a platform like Facebook, and you just go, this type of content goes to that kind of platform, and this type of content goes to that kind of platform. But those are censored platforms. Instagram censored, Facebook censored, Twitter censored, YouTube, they've already deleted me, Pinterest already deleted me. So I'm now, rebooting both those platforms. And I've been through that. I've been deplatformed. I've had my payment, gateway removed, all this stuff that goes on just to try to silence you. I've been through it all. And so where I'm at right now is I'm stoked. I really am. Through my journey, there's been a swell of awakening. It's been going on all these years, 26 years now into it. And there's a swell, there's a groundswell happening. And it's reached, this is the biggest wake up call ever in the history of the world, actually, what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so come on, that is the best news possible, really. If we think about it, that's like really good news. They
Yeah.
flubbed this one pretty bad. They flubbed it. And people are realizing it. So it's cool. I don't have any complaints. I mean, it would be nice if we could have our travel back the way it was before, but it's not going to be that way anymore. The way they're going with their, control of passports and vaccine passports and all this other stuff that they're just making up and trying to just drive in through their big money UN and World Health, or can I say
Yeah.
World Health Organization? I don't know what they have to do with health. We have to also define what health is.
Right. Yeah, I mean, isn't that bizarre in itself with all of this going on, how little mainstream talk there has been on how to get truly healthy?
That tells you right there. That just says everything. You know, I think that I call him Ansem Poops or
Hmm.
Anderson Cooper. It's Merck sponsors him. Each one of those guys, Sanjay Gupta, he's GlaxoSmithKline. Every single one of those guys you see is on the board of these, or sorry, is on the payroll of these mega big pharma companies. And so they cannot, and I mean it, they cannot say anything negative about big pharma because they are owned. And big pharma owns the U.S. government and the Canadian government and most every government around the world because they're the ones paying the bills that are actually getting these people elected. So I think RFK Jr. said it well. He said this is a move by big pharma to take over the world, and he saw it coming. I saw it coming. We all saw it coming. But they don't have a strong enough pandemic, whatever you want to call it. They've got a very, very bad two tests, the antibody test and the PCR test. They're very, very inaccurate. Therefore, none of our numbers are inaccurate. There's not enough deaths. That's a big problem for these maniacs. So they have to lump everything together. You know, oh, this person had diabetes, had a stroke, now COVID-19. So we're going to call them a COVID-19. We've got that boosting the numbers by at least 2/3. You see what, this stuff. It's just, to me, it's a cosmic giggle. I'm so stoked. I'm getting up. I'm fired up every morning and I'm lit up going berserk. It's actually, I'm having the best time ever. Really am.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we also love to travel, and that's an inconvenience. At the same time, like, it feels like a necessary break. I mean, when we got back here in Perth, it could have just been that we were paying more attention, but the birds did seem happier. The sky did seem brighter. There did feel like there was a beauty that was blossoming that often is ignored. We were hearing more kids playing and more parents playing with their kids and all that beauty that we often can ignore. Or maybe the earth did actually need a break. Like, maybe this is a good thing to do every now and then, just to shut down, get back on the earth and reconnect and let earth revitalize. Because I mean, we just can't keep going the way we've been going, right?
That was well said. That was so well said. That I think summarizes my first 6 weeks in this, where I was just feeling Mother Nature's relief. There's a relief. Something is palpable. Like, whoa, something's different about the earth. And then also I think it's almost a subconscious relief that people had who went back to the soil, went back to gardening, went back to planting. I've been talking to all the local businesses, actually all through this province, all through Quebec, even all the way into Brunswick, all the way over to Labrador, and even the other way, Alberta. This has been the biggest year for nurseries and gardening supply centers ever, by far, in this region. And what a great thing. How that is just the best news. That I couldn't be better than that. That's such great news.
Wow.
And just talking to my friend, a friend of mine just stopped by the other day. He just came over to the house and he has a business in the local town that's like 45 minutes from here. It's like a town of 50,000 or more. So it's our biggest local town. And he's got a business there. And he was just like, it's all silver lining. Even though his business has been kind of shut down, he's been in quasi activity with it. He's probably getting maybe 1/3 or 1/4 of the income he was getting before. He's just like, I can't believe what's happening to people. I can't believe what's going on in my neighborhood and how people are going back to the land and back to the soil. Really good news on that side.
All right, David. Well, I did want to pick your brain and further get to know you more, really. I feel like I know you quite deeply, but I want to get to know your journey. Like, for so many of us into health and wellness, you've been like the man that brought superfoods and brought this kind of just more cutting edge approach to getting healthy. I'd love to know who were your inspirations? Like, what first got you into this? Because with my background, like, I wasn't brought up healthy. And that was kind of the inspiration for me. I was like seeing all this unhealthiness, and then people like you started popping up, and it was these are my inspirations. So who started you off?
I'd have to say most likely it was probably Jack LaLanne if I had to name one person, because when I was a kid on TV, he was the guy, and I always was looking at him going, I want to do something like that on TV, but I don't want to do the fitness stuff. And that never made sense to me. Like, I didn't want to be doing what do they call them, flagpoles, where you're doing like push-ups like this, but you got one bar like that, crazy stuff like that. I just never saw myself doing that. But I saw him probably 1975 on the Merv Griffin show is probably when I first became aware of that health culture. In 1977, we came to California for the first time. I'm originally from New York, New Jersey, which is East Coast of North America. And we came to Southern California in 1977 to visit my uncle who bought a house way out in the country in East San Diego. And we started planting fruit trees pretty much immediately. Maybe it was that winter, 77, 78, where I planted my first avocado trees and became connected to living barefoot in Southern California on the earth. And that just directly connected me to the long lineage of Dr. Bernard Jensen and Irons and all these people who had their health sanitariums in East San Diego. Now, it was north of where I was down by the border. So we had Otay Wilderness and then border, boom. So we got Mexican TV when I was a kid too. That was also had a very strong impact on me. Mexican culture, and also the impact of Mexican culture on Southern California, including the botanical side and horticultural side, growing citrus, growing limes, growing avocados, growing pomegranates, all that stuff, mulberries, was just right. 1978 was probably when it really kicked off, even though I had been a renegade planter in my neighborhood in New Jersey before that. So once you know that about me, you know what I'm like I am a fanatical planter. And my nonprofit Fruit Tree Planting Foundation has planted over 1 million trees in the last 18 years. So we're out there every single weekend. We've got a project going. This last one was in Denver. There's always something going on, so when somebody's, it's a weekend, let's go out on the boat or whatever, let's go party. I'm basically hunkered down trying to organize the next thing for our foundation and the next strategy for the year. And, that's a very, very important thing to me, is to keep planting more and more trees. And we call that overgrowing the government. And it started young. And then like right now I grow all kinds of amazing things here. Lots of currants, lots of Hascat berries, blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. We grow lots of unique varieties of tobacco, ornamental tobaccos, flowering nicotianas, all the way to the heirloom variety from this region that I got from a tomb 14 or 15 years ago, and sprouted that seed that had been estimated to be 800 to 2,000 years old. And I sprouted that, and I've been growing. That's what I just repotted right before we got on this call. And that's my favorite plant of all time. This is my 14th or 15th year growing it. And every year something is like, oh man, look at what, I never saw that before. It just got surprises.
Wow.
Every year.
I wanted to talk to you about tobacco, and I knew you were very passionate about growing tobacco and even smoking it. I mean, it's been this kind of stigma in terms of getting healthy that one should, of course, eliminate tobacco, but there seems to be a bit of confusion about that, because there's actual health benefits to tobacco potentially, if it's good quality tobacco, if maybe it's done with the reverence that, like what shifted my perspective, I'd love to get your take on it, was being in ceremony, being in ayahuasca ceremonies, in peyote ceremonies and whatnot, and seeing the reverence to the tobacco and the cleansing and the power to it, putting our prayers into the smoke and whatnot. And then also trips to India and seeing the sadhus and the yogis similarly using the Ayurvedic herbs and whatnot to create a fire of purification, and inhaling it mindfully, heartfully, is completely, it's a different experience to the smoking that we see in terms of like smoking cigarette after cigarette. It feels to me completely different. I'd love to get your take on tobacco, and is it healthy to smoke? Is it what's the whole deal in your mind right now with it?
Some years ago, it probably started in the mid 1990s when I first became aware of Terrence McKenna, and then one of my employees back then got me all the MP3s of Terrence McKenna's stuff. I had hundreds of those. I still have them somewhere. And so I was listening to that, and he was like, the plant, that's your guru. Grow the plant, figure it out from there. And so that's always been my directive about all psychoactive plants. I have San Pedro or Wachuma cactus growing out. It's an indoor-outdoor thing here because it's too cold in the winter to be out there, but I bring them in and out. So I've got, I don't know, 10 of those here that are protectors of the home. I've been a tobacco grower, and I'll get into that in a second, but all of them I have grown over my life. And ayahuasca, chacruna, peyote, at some point I've grown those for years. I mean, in my mom's backyard in San Diego, I have a crazy collection of wachuma there. And I grew peyote in the backyard there for many, many years, just in pots that I didn't know what to do with them. So I just put them in pots in my mom's backyard. But eventually I think somebody figured out, one of my mom's gardeners, and swiped those particular ones. But whatever, whatever. But it was the experience of it has taught me that you have to really grow these things to really understand them. And then in 2004, I think it was, I was in upstate New York and drinking ayahuasca, and I got a very strong message from ayahuasca. It was like, you're going to grow tobacco, and that's going to be your thing. And I was like, tobacco? I mean, my reference to tobacco was still obscured, even though I had understood sacred peyote or wachuma or these other things. I still didn't get the tobacco thing at all. I think most of us are in that boat. And ayahuasca was like, oh, this is what you're going to be doing. And I was like, okay, sure. I'll figure it out. And from the seed up, have just worked through it. How do you deal with the leaves? How do you ferment it? What do you do with how do you smoke it? How do you prepare? What if you're going to do a râpé, blow it up your nose? What if you're going to create it into an ambil and put it into as a lozenge in your cheek and gum? I mean, I've been through all of that plant alchemy and love it all. So that's where I'm coming from. Direct experience. Tobacco takes your prayers straight to heaven. That's why there's a whole entire world trying to stop that. That's the power of it. And that's why we have to chemicalize it. We have all these evil corporations trying to control it, all this stuff that they're doing. 800 additives, 4,000 chemicals. It's so bad, man. And I was like, let's go to zero chemicals, zero anything. The longest lived people in the world are tobacco smokers to the letter. You take the person, you look at their history, you'll find out that they've been a tobacco smoker since they were 12 years old and smoked all the way till they're 114, 116, 117, 120, 121, et cetera. And that goes on. And I've seen that actually with shamans in the Amazon who were in their 90s who were great and smoked since they were 12 years old. And I was just like, wow, that's an interesting thing to be around. So it's the chemicals that cause cancer. Yeah. It's the misuse of the sacred sacrament that causes problems, because it takes your prayers to heaven. That's why you see all those dudes up in those ivory towers with their big cigars, right? All celebrating with their little, wine or whatever their alcohol is in their cigar, because the cigar is actually amplifying their prayers, even though in those cases the prayer is for money, control, whatever their trip is, but it will still give you what you pray for. And tobacco is the carrier of your word, the carrier of your meaning, the carrier of your inner desire. And when you put that out into the universe, it's potent, very powerful.
So, I mean, my own experience with it, I enjoy tobacco. I find if it is the good quality tobacco, pure tobacco, it doesn't feel addictive. It doesn't feel at all like a cigarette. Would you agree? It doesn't. I mean,
I don't know how people get it. That's you can only do that with processed tobacco, really, because after a while you're like, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good. I've had enough. And most people who come around the block a few times, and there's suddenly in a ceremony, here comes the peace pipe around. They take one hit of that peace pipe, and it's kind of like when you first took your hit of cannabis when you were a kid or something, and you're just like, whoa, what? Mm-hmm. And that experience can go on for an hour, because as you get older, more mature, and you're more sensitive to subtle vibrations, it's no longer kid time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're not a teenager anymore. You realize that just that one hit of tobacco can go on for an hour or 2 hours, right? Whereas in the old days, we always thought, why would people smoke tobacco? I mean, it's gone in like 2 minutes. But not really. And then for many years, I was walking around going, tobacco, like we have the endocannabinoid system and cannabis and how it relates to the endocannabinoid system. So every cannabis user says, why do we have a cannabis endocannabinoid system if we're not designed for cannabis? And the other thing is even more crazy, which is we have nicotine receptors in every cell in hundreds of times more concentration than endocannabinoid. And that's the entire mitochondria NMN system, and that entire system that, what's his name? Professor Sinclair has been studying. They've been studying that mitochondrial energy production. We've seen NADH plus NAD. Those are all nicotine based. That whole thing, vitamin B3, all nicotine based. So the actual nicotine presence in our metabolism is profound, and at every cell, and involved deeply in the energy production of every cell. That's even crazier than anybody would have guessed. And I kept saying that, whatever. People are like, oh no, you're nuts. But then eventually the NADH plus broke out, and people started going, oh, okay, there's something about nicotine and metabolism. Nicotine is not a poison to you. It's a poison that gives life. It can actually extend your life. It activates the frontal cortex, which is the thing that makes you uniquely human. And that's exactly what crosswords do and word puzzles do. And that, to me, is why tobacco users live a long time, is because they're constantly activating that frontal cortex with blood flow.
I mean, it's a loaded one, because I've got dear friends, and even my wife Jo, her mom died of lung cancer, and it's such an issue. And it's a thick one of healthy folks being anti-tobacco, but really they're anti-cigarettes. But it's such a thick,
it's
loaded,
a thick soup. Yeah,
it is a big
agree.
one, and I often find there's not much room to talk about it. It's kind of just get that tobacco away from me. So it seems helpful to just get re-educated on it, because it's not black and white, and cigarettes aren't really even tobacco.
I wouldn't touch any of that stuff ever. I mean, I'm a tobacco grower, so I can tell you, I know what they're doing. What they do is they'll take all the stuff they can't sell, they'll press it, turn that, like stems. They'll press those stems, and then it'll squish down, and that becomes more leaf material that they can sell. They'll take the tobacco juice and they'll respray it on all their plants, and they'll spike all the alkaloids by taking the tobacco tea and then spraying it again on their plants. And that's how people get that rush, that kick, that like, oh, I need another kick like that. That's not natural. That's not part of how tobacco is. It's a much more enduring and longer lasting experience. It's not this up, down. That's the alkaloid bump that they're doing with this tea spraying. And obviously there's burn agents. That's a whole nother problem with, when you have a cigarette, my old timer friends, from the 1960s, they're like, oh, when I used to have a cigarette at my break at work, it would last for 12 minutes.
Right.
Now it lasts 90 seconds. Because of the burn agents. It just goes on and on. It's just, you don't, if you're going to use tobacco, grow it yourself, or find somebody who does grow it and make sure it's sacred, and then, use it with respect. If you're not doing it that way, it's not really the right thing for you.
And these plants, what I find helpful is to connect with the plant deeply, way before even ingesting it or smoking it or bringing it into our bodies. There's power to even just growing it and being with it. These plants are powerful. We've got a lot of San Pedro around our house as well, and I don't actually consume it as much as I used to back in the day. It's more of like this, I don't need to. Just connecting with the plant is powerful in itself, right?
I completely agree. That's from 26 years of growing this stuff, maybe even longer. No, it's really longer, because it started for me growing cannabis when I was 16, right? So if I go back in that's like, 34 years of dealing with this kind of stuff, like just growing it and tuning in with it. Growing it tunes you into what's going on, so you don't need to really ingest it. I'd say that's also true with food too. The more food you grow, the less you need to eat it. Right. So farmers are notorious in that way, that they typically grow the food, but shouldn't really be eating that food, because you get the energetics from having those, those patterns around you. So I found that to be true. I think that's a legit concept.
And I mean, when your feet are on the earth, when you're getting sunlight, I mean, we're in a way, we're kind of similar to plants in that we can really tune into this cosmic energy, this universal energy. And when we are more masterful with our breathing and getting our feet actually on the earth, maybe we don't need to consume as many calories as we thought we did after all. That
really comes down to wild food eating. I mean, that's really all. If like we farm here just for fun, because it's just a hobby and it's just fun to have stuff around. But ultimately this area in 500 years ago, it wasn't farmed because it was just all wild and just nature's producing everything you need. So in that situation, you're always at your ideal weight. You're always at your ideal fitness level. Everything's all at ideal vitality because such the prevalence of the wild food and the wild herbs here. I really don't, grow a garden in the sense of like, okay, here's the row of carrots, here's the row of this. I don't do that kind of thing. I just basically have like areas where I've got deep amounts of clover going, which is your nitrogen fixer. Then I just turn that stuff over and then plant right in it. And, then I'll just take another pot of something else I was growing, rhubarb or something, and be like, okay, that's going over there, and just turn the soil over and then boom, pop it in there. And that's how we've done it here for years. And it's fun what comes up. I've got some elfwort coming up right now, which is elecampane, which its root is very well known as an interesting herbal medication. And then I've got some beautiful echinaceas coming. Incredible. So that's really an exciting find. And that was planted a couple years ago, but they keep coming back the same spot. So that was kind of neat to see that. And then just fun stuff like, the wild apples of this region, wild plums and my plums, and the interaction of the animals here is just amazing. So I can see when like a deer did a pass through the yard when I was gone the other day, they know exactly when you're not there. And I was like, oh, I guess I should block the back over here. And at the last second, got too busy, and they did a pass, well, one of them did through the yard, and I could see, like, oh, it nibbled that, did that, took that, that you're in tune with them because I'm trying to keep them out of here. I don't want them coming in my yard. So I'm constantly doing things to keep them out. That's another whole interaction that we've lost. That's very important to our development as a human being is how do you deal with animals and how do you keep them out naturally? That's such an amazing process for me personally that I've gone through here for 15 years. It's just amazing. Like I've got them out of my garden. I've got it so barricaded in with fallen debris of trees and just sticks that I put across. They can't get through it. And so that's the natural way. And that's how it's supposed to be. And then that area will just present itself to you where you go, this is the spot you can barricade in easiest and keep them out. It's just, it's like everything in nature is super obvious. That's why I love Rudolf Steiner so much. Rudolf Steiner's whole trip was the super sensible. Everything's so sensible. Everything's super obvious. That's exactly the trouble we're in right now is everything's super complicated and it's overbearing and it's overwhelming. That's a big issue of our times. And going back to nature, everything's obvious, super simple. Whatever you need. Like the other day I was in my yard and I was just in the driveway actually, and my neighbors drove up and the little young girl jumped out and the mom jumped out and they're like, oh my God, we just hit this. And it was a grouse. It was just like a wild chicken of the forest up here. And it was still warm. And they put it in my hands. I was like, oh my God, you guys just hit this. This is like alive. I mean, it was dead, but it was like just dead within a minute. And they're like, okay, we're going, take care of it. And I'm just like, whoa. And then they drove off. And I was like, what am I going to do with this? Because I'm a vegetarian. So I'm like, I'm not going to eat it, but I'm going to definitely have the crew here eat it because that's the best chicken you're ever going to have. It's like the complete local wild chicken, freshly killed right there on the spot. And so I was like, okay, I've got to actually, like get the skin off and like learn that process. And I'll give them the chicken breast like you'd buy in like a store, right? Or the whole chicken body with the legs and the whole thing. And that was rough for me because I'm not that guy, but there it was just presented to me. Now, as I cut into its gullet, there was 11 seeds that were sprouted in there. That was a trip. And it was eating seeds and it was eating dandelion leaves. And it had it all stored here in its gullet. And so I took those seeds out and I planted them. And it turns out it was beech trees. Beech trees are fascinating trees up here. Beech. Very interesting genus, very interesting botanically. And they're a heavy feeder. So like all the waste of this house that goes out into the forest actually goes to a stand of beech trees. And they're beautiful, beautiful tree in every respect. And when the winter comes, they don't really lose their leaves. So all their leaves turn white, but are still there all the way through the winter, even into the springtime of the next year. So that's kind of neat too, the way that they don't lose all their leaves. They stay attached, but they eventually lose all the color. It was just a whole education on beech trees that I got just from the normal, like it's just, you can't get it in books. You can't get it other ways. I've got this swallow that's right outside my window that, so I have a drum set. I'm a drummer, and this swallow and its family, like, they're cool with me playing the drums. Like, they'll come and they'll like sit on a branch and like watch, and I'm blasting their little nest right there. It's like right, imagine this window right here, just on the other side right there. And I'm going berserk. And they're just like, whoa, cool. That's also really neat. And you just befriend the animals around so that the animals become you're part of the whole ecosystem. And one of the animals that's here is the wolves. I'm a wolf. I actually have wolves that live on this property. At the bottom of this hill, there's a whole bunch of wolf dens. That's also super fun. Go check that out and be like, what's going on in there? Because they have deep dens that go down. And then they'll have another spot where it comes out in another place. And so you're always trying to find both the entrances, or sometimes there's 3 entrances. And neat.
Wow. What a place. Amazing. So being a vegetarian, there's a lot of debate right now, a lot of kind of mini wars between, the carnivore way, which is pretty prevalent right now. I know a lot of people that have taken on the carnivore lifestyle, and of course, extreme kind of fanaticism, extreme veganism. I'd love to hear where you're at, like your perception of this kind of a rising carnivore lifestyle. And are you in debate? Do you have any hang-ups with meat? Speaking of meat and the chicken that you prepared, like it's challenging as a vegetarian to kind of face that inevitability of animals, and they're going to die one way or another. There you are picking up a dead chicken. What am I going to do with it? I'm not going to eat it. I'm a vegetarian. But you had the strength and clarity to prepare it for your friends. It's here. So I'd just love to hear your take on the carnivore thing. Are you heavily against meat? Do you see any place for it? Where are you at with it these days?
Great question. I've been a vegetarian for 31 years, so it's been a long time. Most of that time vegan. I've known all the fanatics. I've been a fanatic myself. I'm past all those stages. I don't have any problem with anybody who wants to eat meat or anything else they want to eat. I'm out of the diet wars. That ended a long time ago for me. It's just, I am a vegetarian because it's a personal choice. And if people want to know more about my personal choice, I'm happy to tell them, but I'm not a purveyor of like, you have to be this or that or any of that stuff, because I eventually, I'm a book reader, and for many years I spent a lot of my life looking for the correct philosophy. And eventually when I got to Rudolf Steiner, and Rudolf Steiner said, there are as many diets on earth as there are human beings on earth. And once I got that, I realized that resonated with truth. That's true. There's nobody who eats like me. There's nobody who eats like the other guy who lives over in the other house over here. There's nobody eats like us. Everyone's unique. We eat a lot of wild food. I had a lot of wild food last night for dinner, and a lot of wild green foods, and it was so epic. But I couldn't imagine anybody else eats that. That's where I've gotten to with my life. And so that's where I'm at with it. My work is way more involved in overthrowing the medical tyranny and making people aware of the medical tyranny, because actually my work in nutrition made me intimately aware of the dangers of medical tyranny and its encroachment on our lives, which has gotten worse and worse and worse as the freedoms of like, oh, look, we could eat this instead, or curcumin, what a great natural anti-inflammatory, and different opportunities to choose different things other than the drugs. Because of that, the big pharma has gone tighter and gripped harder, because they realize people are having more choice. And that's what's going on right now. They're trying to grip everybody to make sure they get their big sales days in, when they'll grip a whole government and be like, you're going to buy our vaccine now. That's kind of where this whole thing's going to. And so to me, this has been, just a natural evolution of where I've always wanted to go, which is because I grew up in medical tyranny. I mean, I grew up with both my parents are medical doctors. I've seen it since the time I was a child. I was like, when I was 7 years old, that was the last time I got vaccinated. And I was like, never again. No one's ever coming at me with a needle. I'll kick, I'll bite. No chance that's ever happening again. That's where I was coming from at 7 years old. So I've been kind of seeing it. And also when I was a real young child, about that age, all the way through until I was a teenager, was our neighbor was a matriarch of a very wealthy family. And she was like constantly telling me, here's what your social security number really is. Here's what the UN's really about. Here's what they're trying to do. Here's how they corrode governments. Here's their strategy. I mean, this is like since I was 5, that young. I'd come home from school and I'd go to their house, and then I'd sit there. I would just sit there and say nothing. And she would be like, hey, you know, what'd you learn in school today? And I'd be like, we learned about presidents. And she'd like, let me tell you about presidents. It started right there. It was great. So I've had a very, very big suspicion of troubles on high all along. And it's great to be able to voice that and be out of the kind of the diet wars. That's kind of, you know, petty.
Yeah. Just practically speaking, like when I look at the carnivore, I've got nothing against it either, but just nutritionally, like when one is like long-term, just having steak and black coffee, I just wonder what it's going to be like long-term. What do you think? Is it sustainable? Can someone really thrive? And again, everyone's different, but it's becoming a kind of prescribed lifestyle. And I just have my suspicions on that. Can someone truly thrive? Sure, they might shed a whole lot of weight really fucking quick, but in terms of like real thriving vitality and longevity, what do you think? Steak and coffee, can it be done?
It can be done by some people for some reason, as long as you don't eat too much.
Right.
That's another thing too, is like your body's homeostasis is so strong that as soon as you don't eat anything or take any stimulants, your body goes back into homeostasis. That's why my dad's alive still, for sure. My dad's 80 now, and he's only alive for that reason, because he never ate very much. He'd eat one bite of a roast beef sandwich, take a sip of Gatorade, and wouldn't touch food for 8 hours. Then he'd go out with us. He'd nibble at a few things. We'd eat all the food as kids, and he'd go up back and get on a phone call, you know, because that was before the cell phone days. So he'd go back to the back end of the restaurant where they had a phone and talk to whoever he was talking to. And so I can see that people can live a long time like that. That's not necessarily good for you. It's not good for your joints. It's not good for your tissue quality, but you could survive it. And that's really what we're dealing with, isn't it? I mean, most humans are just like surviving. We need to get to thriving. And to do that, I really look at the whole picture. And one of the big elements in the picture is the mushroom kingdom. That's a big picture. There's the animal kingdom. There's the plant kingdom. There's some interesting other kingdoms. Of course, bacteria is a very important thing we've been hearing more and more about. That's called the microbiome or probiotics that protect us and live on us. Well, that's a whole kingdom. And that's very important. And another one, interestingly, is the archaea, which are this super indestructible substances that exist in various little aspects of our ecosystem. And I have the suspicion that some medicinal mushrooms, because we know with cordyceps, it's a grouping of particular organisms, not just one. And I suspect chaga is also one of those. That chaga in nature, the wild chaga, actually incorporates into its structure an archaea. And when you look at all of those and you go, okay, like for example, the other day, you know, ants, I got the big black ant here. They're beautiful. I love them so much. They live right here with me. They come around and they clean up my desk. And they're just so friendly. But every now and then they'll drown in my honey. You know, and I do eat honey, so I'm not vegan in that respect. I'm a beekeeper. So they drown in the honey. So I got a bunch the other day. I was like, scoop that goes into the food, that gets blended in, because you need something from the animal world. I just don't want to be responsible for killing it. I'm not going to kill it. I don't want to have that karma of killing it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
totally.
You have to right relationship with that right there is very important. That is actually my thing. Like, I don't need to go out there and kill something to eat. No way. I'll never do that. I don't need to do that. But if they drown in the honey, they had a good death. And I know the power of ants medicinally, and especially that type of ant, the big black ant, and the power herbally. And so, you know, so that's where I skirt that line. It's like, if, you know, fruit flies are on my fruit, I'm not a Jane. There's an old phrase that says you can't be a farmer and be a Jane. And that's because every now and then you have to make a tough decision. Like I had to trap, you know, 5 or 6 gophers or groundhogs and move them and transport them. That was tricky and difficult. And these are big, beautiful animals. And then I have to trap 5 or 6 raccoons out of here and had to transport them away. And that's also, you know, very difficult, especially for a vegetarian. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to hurt them, but I got to get them out. And so you have to play this game. It's interesting.
The fasting thing. Where are you at with fasting? I've had incredible. It's a big part of my lifestyle. I love to more of like intermittent fasting. Time restricted eating. I feel it benefits me immensely having just a small window of eating and then like 18, 19, 20 hours of fasting. I do that a few times a week and it feels great. I felt better than ever incorporating that into my life. Where are you at with the fasting?
I think it's the best thing ever. I'm
Mm-hmm.
absolutely impressed that it's gotten to the point now where people know about it.
Right.
And I've had to go back and really make sure I get my 2 long fasts in each year. This year, I'll probably do another one, the fourth one actually. So I've done 2 so far this year. I've got 2 more long ones. And I'm definitely going to do another week-long fast and water fast. And then I may even go for something crazy like a 21-day water fast, probably in the wintertime. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. So I'm really into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things that like you have to fast as you get to a certain age to stay younger and to keep yourself fit, because when you're fasting, this is one of the things I learned from the great masters. I went to the Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation in San Diego way early on and got downloaded all the information of Bernard Jensen, all the stuff by, what was the natural hygiene guy? What was his name? The Science and Fine, Herbert Shelton,
Mm-hmm.
and Arnold Ehret's stuff, all these great works. And one of the things that Paul Bragg said was, when you are fasting, you are on God's operating table.
Hmm. Wow.
And I have found that to be true. When you're fasting on water, you're on God's operating table. And if you need to lie down, you lay down right there. If you have the energy to keep going, get up, keep going, do whatever you're going to do. But I've found also when you are fasting, it's really nice. You just follow exactly what your instinct's telling you to do. You're tired, lay down, go boom, go lay down. And then the main issue I have with fasting, is the hardest part for me, is that I have so much energy when I'm fasting that I don't know what to do with myself. That is by far the hardest part, because I can't sleep. I just got to keep going. So I'm going all hours, just nonstop. And that does get a little bit, that gets a little bit difficult, because you're constantly with yourself going, I haven't eaten anything like 6 days now. Oh my God.
Do you burn out or you can sustain it?
Oh no, I could sustain it. Every time I do a fast, I'm always trying to do something additional, add something additional on, including like the old days of traveling while water fasting, airports, events, even doing events while water fasting. I've done that many times in my career.
Wow.
The last one I did was on the 4th day of a water fast. I did a 6-hour event. That was intense.
Wow.
That was intense.
I've been playing with bringing in the the Stammet stack, lion's mane,
Which the niacin, lion's mane, psilocybin combo.
Yeah, I've been exploring that on fasts, and it's been beautiful. Been having deep, beautiful meditations and just feeling light and fresh. That's been an interesting exploration. Have you explored that?
I have, many years ago. I think I stumbled into the lion's mane, psilocybin, reishi shaga combo way back in 2004, 2005. But I'm not a real magic mushrooms guy. I mean, I burned it out early, where I did that when I was younger, and that's about as much as my body just rejects it. I can't really do it anymore. And so that's good. I'm happy for that. And I got what I needed from those experiences, which were vast, great, best ever, stoked for all those teachings. And now if I'm going to go into the medicine, most likely what it's going to be today is going to be peyote with Native American Church.
Mm-hmm.
Is really the context now. Just because I'm in North America, I've got a ceremonial grounds we're constructing here for Native American Church. I have a very long history with Native American Church, over 20 years. And that's just more where I'm at. So it's got to be, I just, the old days of like going to, even into nature and taking magic mushrooms and stuff were wonderful, great. I'm so glad for those experiences. And it's just not where I'm at today. It's more about focusing down on prayers and kind of what is needed on the earth today.
Yeah.
Prayers for humanity, prayers for healing, prayers for the getting through the eye of the needle that we're headed through right now. It's challenging times for many, many people, and very important time to be focused on like kind of group healing and group ascension.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And really refreshing. And that shift of like, what can I get from it to what can we do together? It's a big shift. It's a big shift.
It is a bit. It's a maturity. It's
Yeah.
maturing. It comes with maturity, and it's not that I knock anybody who wants to go out and trip out on magic mushrooms. They're 24 years old and they're having a great weekend. Great, do it. It's so fun. I mean, I had the best times ever, with all of those things. And then there comes a time when you mature, and it's a stage in your life, and you come to a different stage with it, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience, and it's beautiful to come to that place naturally. You come to it naturally.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess so many people do need that time in nature by themselves. They've had overstimulation, they've been talking way too fucking much. There's a time to retreat, pull back, listen. But then there's also a time to integrate and to bring it back into community.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
And we're more, it's more, you reach a certain age too, where all the kids around you, I've got a gal she's 20. She's going to be 20 in August. And I've raised her since she was 2.5. You know what I mean? That's like, whoa, that's full on. So all these kids that are around, I'm like, okay, I'm at a stage now in my life where I can really hand them really important information and be a good role model for them as they're growing up, because I was that crazy kid. I was out of control, wild, out of control kid. So I've been to the extremes, and also saw a lot of, people who didn't make it. A lot of people didn't make it.
Yeah.
I was talking to a mutual friend who's very famous on the internet, actually, Crow 777. I don't know if you know Crow 777 and his stuff. We were talking the other day, and we were like, he was telling me that like 50% of the people from our region of San Diego, where we're from, didn't make it in our age group. They're gone.
Wow.
And that was intense, because that was the epicenter of the meth epidemic in North America, right there, right where I grew up. And I saw it as a kid. I just was like, I'm not touching that because it's made in a lab, and I don't want nothing. If it's made in nature, okay, great. But if it's that coming out of lab, no way. And lucky I made that choice, because many people did not, and they're not alive today as a result.
Wow. Water. I love water. You love water. Again, it's easy to just assume. Like, I meet healthy people left, right, and center that I think it would make a conscious choice of what kind of water they're putting in their body, and they're drinking tap water all day long. And I used to be very staunch on it and come on them strong. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, and I'd be very, very fanatic with it. I've loosened up over the years on the water thing, but where do you think the tap water situation is at, like, generally speaking?
It gets worse and worse because the pipes are getting older.
Right.
And all you have to do in those old homes on the East Coast of North America, you just go in the basement, bang the pipes with a wrench, and then turn the faucets on, and all the rust and scale comes out. It's pretty gnarly. It really is. Now, I'm very, very particular about water. I selected this house in this place because we're on a spring here. You can hear actually the pumps going off right now because Groove is over there at her house. We're on the same water. Her house, my house, and she's watering her plants. So I can hear that she's actually turning on the pump, which means the spring water is activated to go over to her side. Now, the spring water situation here is really good because we have no scale. There's no calcium or iron in this water. We're at like 14 parts per million, sometimes even 8 or 9 parts per million. So I could spray the windows. There was not even going to be a stain at all, ever. And that's awesome. I love that about this water here. And that's what I really want for people who become aware that as a water bearer and water keeper and water protector, that you should be seeking out the great springs of the world and places to collect and protect, and maybe even own. I was just very fortunate. I stumbled into this property. It's absolutely a dream come true. I mean, let me just show you what I'm working on right now. Watch this. This is what I've been working on the last couple of days. And, I'm a Victor Schauberger guy. So boom, I've got these kind of inserts here. You can see there what's going on there. These are all 5-sided pyramids. You can see what's going on there. And then this is more a typical thing that I'm working with. You can see it's fluted you can see it's got the spin. So it propels the water into a spiral.
Right. Wow.
It's really cool. The water here. One of these days, I'm going to put it all together. And I'm going to crack Victor Schauberger's implosion motor. But
Wow.
I've been working on it all these years, and now that I'm home after this 26 years of traveling nonstop, I've been here for over 3 months. It's the first time it's ever happened in my life. I've been in one place for an entire season. I was here for the entire spring without leaving the property. That was so epic, dude. That was the best ever.
That's beautiful.
So it's bringing back these projects.
So for urban folks that don't live on a spring, and what would you suggest is the best option? To order spring water, to get a good filter?
Well, you definitely got to get filtered. If you're on city water in any way, just even touching it or washing your dishes with it or washing your clothes in it or anything, you need to have a full house filtration system, preferably water softener. And that way that self-flushing water softener, so that it self-flushes every 2 weeks, is a good system just to keep the value of your house in your pipes. Otherwise, you're going to accrete scale and it's going to be a problem down the road. So if you want to keep your house clean and healthy, if you're planning to sell it or you want to pass it along to your children or something like that, that's important. Then beyond that, I would say taking advantage of like what we do here, which is at every output, you can, like, for example, if you want to drink it and you're like, I don't want to get spring water, let's say somebody's in that mode, I'd get an RO filter. I'd get a good RO that tells you if there's a rip in the bag. If it doesn't tell you that, that's not the RO filter that you want. It's got to alert you if there's a problem with one of the RO filters, because if there's a rip and everything's just coming through, then it's just not going to work anyway. So I did a whole project with Erin Brockovich, who's very famous from her film, Erin Brockovich, I think was the film by the same name. And we did a RO project together, which is really phenomenal, called AquaTrue. I don't know if it's available in Australia, but we have it in North America. So anybody's in that mode, like they're in a city situation, like, look, start there. And then at least you got the RO water, and then you can activate it in a copper vessel under the moon, or add sea salt to it, or do something to kind of bring the vitality back into it. And that's kind of what needs to happen, because the pattern is not there, or the information, right? The form is not there. It's been destructured. With spring water here, it's an absolute joy to drink the water that we have here. It's beyond belief, best ever. So I really recommend that people, if you can get to a spring, at least go check it out, become someone who's interested in spring water. And eventually somebody has got to buy these sacred lands with the sacred springs on it and protect them. So I'm always putting out that prayer for those people out there who are in that mindset.
Yeah, when we were getting our filter put on the whole house, we were getting tests on the tap water, just not that we've drank it ever, but just to see like what we're showering in, for example, getting out of a chlorinated pool, showering off under the shower to wash the chlorine off. It got revealed that there was more chlorine coming through the tap, the shower and the drinking kitchen tap than there was in a chlorine pool. So yeah,
that's nuts. I get that though. I've been in places. I've noticed too. This is a crazy thing. We'll say two things. One is we are very, very close to overturning fluoridation in the United States. That case right now is going to be reactivated on August 8th. And the judge wants more science, and we have plenty of science. So we're like, okay, we'll overload this guy, but we could see a complete overturn of water fluoridation with a landmark case this summer in the United States, which is very important because fluoride is so reactive and so dangerous. It's the most reactive compound and definitely the most reactive halogen in the periodic table. And that's why almost every pharmaceutical will use fluorine in there somewhere to just drive it in, to make it accessible, make the body take it in. And so fluoride is going to be a thing of the past. So I wanted to throw that in there. And then the other thing I was going to say about what was the other piece on that? The water quality issue in the future will be the issue. So this area as a point of focus for people is a very important one, like food is. And it's gonna come down. I've been saying this for years. It's gonna come down because governments are so parasitic. It's gonna come down to survival, meaning that you can't. There's no government's gonna tell you or protect you or anything. So you've got to do the filtering yourself, or else you are going to become the filter.
Yeah.
And you have to take like right there in that corner over there. You see, I got it You can see it's right there. That's an air
Yeah, yeah.
purifier right there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's a complete game changer. That filters out every virus, every dust, dander, everything. And in the winter in this house, because I got a wood burning stove that heats this cabin up, in the winter, there's a lot of smoke gets in this room, and I'm not breathing it in anymore because of these air purifiers. So
Cool.
purifying air, water, and of course food, these are the major directives of our time and will become more important for the future, and also something you want to pass along to your kids, grandkids, etc.
And would you add to that blocking EMFs?
That's another massive. I've got our Wi-Fi, which is up over there. I've got it on a switch. So as soon as the end of the day is there, boom, it turns off. We're turning the whole thing off. Very, very good way to deal with it. I really recommend that system, because that way you have one switch that controls the whole thing. You turn that switch off, it's off. It's not getting any power. You didn't just turn your router off. You turned everything off.
Right. Back to the fluoride thing. Like, my parents swear that it's because of all the tap water I drank as a kid with the fluoride in it is why I've got healthier teeth than they do, and why I still don't have a filling. And they still hold that kind of tidbit of information strong, even though, like, trying to educate them on spring water and filtered water and whatnot. They're still just all about the tap water, and they actually prefer the taste of tap water, and really do think that the fluoride is winning. It's great.
To each his own. This is the insanity that we live in. It's like these toxic chemicals, fluoride from aluminum shavings. It's gnarly, so they were looking to try to get rid of it, and they figured out, let's just put it in the water supply. It's something you can't even pay them to they would pay people to have it taken away. That's how toxic that stuff is. But with fluoride, just like everything else, there's always a little silver lining. So fluoride has minimal effects on dental health. They're slight, not nearly the size of the neurological damage caused by fluoride. There's always two sides to everything. And so that's actually, I think, what's going to weigh this case out that's currently being heard, is the neurological damage, and the history and research on it is extensive. Of fluoride ingestion. And so I think that's what's going to flip this case, is it's very strong. The science is very strong on this. By the way, we are dealing with a culture, and this is why you always have some minor effect, the minor effect of fluoride on teeth and dental health. The reason why you have that being promoted and blown up is because it fits the narrative of what the control system wants to do, and it's easier to control people who are fluoridated, as Hitler found out. That's part of why you're going to get that narrative. We call that scientism, which is essentially checkbook science, or hey, we need that to be kind of highlighted, or let's promote that study but not these. That's scientism, and that is endemic to our entire civilization. And this is one of the biggest things that's being woken up in people right now, is they're having to face that their science, which they thought was so inviolable, is corrupt. They're having to face that the journals, like the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, are corrupt, and that they're paid off. So really what it is, it's like kind of paid advertising of one pharmaceutical company against another. And so peer review, just like everything else, is a mirror, right? It's just an echo chamber of like, well, everybody in this club thinks this is all peer reviewed over here. But then if somebody can't get their thing into that club, they publish a book outside of that club, and then another book outside of that club, or another film outside of that club. And eventually people go, hey, wait a second, maybe that whole club's idea is all wrong, because this film, this movie, this thing, and my experience are different than what that club said. And this is happening right now. This is what's unfolding. And this has been a very difficult thing for me personally to blow the whistle on, because you just couldn't get people to listen to you before. Now people are listening. They're going, oh, I see that the corruption could be very big, and that they could rope everybody in with a test, like in this PCR test situation. That is not an accurate test of anything. And everything hinges on that test. And if that test is faulty, all the numbers, all cases, everything reported is faulty. And so people are having to face that, having to go, oh, whoa, what, this test is not even accurate. What's the deal here? And I did just, I've been looking at this every day for months now. The latest one is a bunch of nurses got together and they started sending tests in that were never even swabbed, all coming back as positive. Which we know the racket now, right? They're gearing up for a big sales job, and it's big money at stake. $1 trillion. It's big money.
Yeah. It's so for people that don't have the time to research and look into steady resources of information, and it's kind of easier just to turn a blind eye and just believe the mainstream and to kind of fluff off what you're saying as conspiracy theory. So, I mean, I guess it comes down to like, well, that's just what you're hearing. I mean, ignorance is a big cliche that clouds a lot of our perception. So there's not a lot you can do to speak to that when someone isn't able to hear it. It seems in these current times like the fear has been very paralyzing, yet it's also this kind of purge. It seems like this collective purge where people are being more able to listen, and this kind of pathology of distraction is kind of getting burnt up, and we're finally able to hear. Would you see something like that going on? What are your perceptions of the kind of navigating of fear and how that can paralyze us and our ability just to tune into our intuition and deeper wisdom?
Everything you said is pretty much precisely what's happening right now. So there's always going to be that group that just listens to what, it's like what Richard Nixon said, the American people will not believe anything unless they see it on TV. So there's going to be that group that just, they see it on TV, they believe it. If it's not on TV, they're not going to believe it. And that group has a certain age range because they grew up on television. And so they've just been, really deeply into that programming, for lack of a better word. Now there's a newer group that's out there of people who have grown up with phones, and they're like, well, what about this? What about that? And so if we're really paying attention to just the direction of censorship and the direction of the big money, and this is kind of how I'm guiding people, is like, look at the direction, like, why is Facebook censoring this kind of information and YouTube and all these things? Like, what's so problematic about other opinions? Why do we have to have it so managed? So if people are paying attention to that, they'll see that there's definitely a narrative being pushed, and there's definitely narratives that they don't want to have out there, regardless of if they're true or not. And that's interesting to me, right? That's very interesting. And so I've just been pointing that out. I've also been pointing out the scientism. For example, with the rollout of the 5G, we should have all these safety studies, right? Where's all this? This is technology. Where's our safety studies? And they're not there because scientism doesn't do safety studies, because scientism is masquerading as science. But when it comes down to the scientific method, they're actually trying to avoid the scientific method. That's the whole 5G rollout. So whenever you point a flashlight on a big money rollout like that, whether it's true or not that 5G is causing whatever, any of that, they don't want the flashlight there. They don't want anybody to look and go, there's no safety studies. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So even though the conspiracy stuff that's built up on top of that might be over the top, for lack of a better pun, nevertheless, the actual flashlight going on to the whole subject in general is what the tech industry does not want to have happen. And this is why we have a managing of all these events, because they're driving us towards big sales days. And they've invested a lot. Bill Gates has invested a lot of money in his vaccine program and the World Health Organization, all these different things. And he's looking for a payday down the road, which is going to be one heck of a payday, by the way. And they use their media assets, right? For example, you think, oh, they don't control the media. I think now we know that the 6 corporations control the Western media. And we've seen the videos of the exact words being used on different news agencies all across North America, word for word. So we know now that from the very top, they're calling it. And I know many people in the media business who could not do that job anymore because you can't tell the truth. And so they had to get out of it, or they found something out like, oh, that plane was actually shot down by a Navy missile. And then they tried to tell that on New York City television and got shut up and yanked off TV. So that's just a big wake up call to everybody. And it's starting to inform us of the deeper truths that are going on. But not everybody's a detective either. That's why we should have good DAs, good government, good people watching out on all this stuff. But we don't, because the governments themselves are very, very deeply corrupted. And so then we have us kind of standing out there, the quote unquote conspiracy theorists, that's going like, hey, follow the money. Look how much money Bill Gates is going to make if they get to mandatory vaccine you, because you don't pay that bill, your government does. So they just rip you off on taxes. Then they're going to pay that bill. So it's just one sales job for one guy in the government right there. And it's one big payday, a 20-to-1 payday in this particular case with Bill Gates for his investment. 20-to-1 payback he's going to get. Now, I don't know about you, but I know most people I've seen that are gamblers, when they can get a 20-to-1 return, they're going to fight for that. They're going to want that one. That's a good return on your money. Spend $1, get 20. People are going to fight over that. And that's what Gates is doing. That's why he's constantly on TV and pushing his whole thing and all his trip with all his agents, all those people, all those news media. They're all bought. They're all bought by Big Pharma too, interestingly. And same with all the politicians. They're all bought by Big Pharma. It's fascinating. So RFK Jr., who I love, and we do a lot of things, coordinated things together. He basically was saying about a year ago, he's like, Big Pharma is kind of gearing up for a takeover of the whole world. He's been saying that. And all of a sudden this whole thing rolls out like, whoa, look at this. So we're going to have to fight for our rights, but every generation does. Every generation, maybe you get 40 years and then it's going to be another thing, and another 40 years and be another thing. Because there's evil just doesn't stay still.
Yeah, it's getting interesting to navigate with kids, bringing kids into the equation, and how much is getting limited in what we can do if they haven't had every single fucking vaccination. Because we've been doing our research since having our first child, and like kind of trying to find a middle ground, so to speak, so we don't fuck up her life in other ways, so researching like what vaccinations are like kind of, for lack of a better word, critical, and what aren't necessary, because the regime that is normalized, that's kind of required if you give birth in a hospital, the regime that they give the baby upon birth is just radical. And all you got to do is look at it, and it should send off alarm bells that surely that's not necessary upon birth. So we just started researching it, because we definitely were like fanatically anti-vaccine for a period, then just through just being in this culture where so much of you just can't do so much if they haven't had so-and-so vaccines, just had us do more research from different sources and find out like what's crucial, what do they actually need. And that's been an interesting just investigation, exploration of not being trapped by our kind of stance on no vaccines. Like, is that actually true? Just kind of investigating, is that fully true? Or is there a kind of middle ground of researching like what's going to be helpful, what's not necessary? So that's been interesting for us to navigate, and just seeing kind of not fully believing ourselves completely as well, that kind of trap of righteousness, and then opening up and just fully researching. Yeah, it has been interesting in finding that middle ground, because we definitely did have that stance. No vaccines, it's all fucked, which has some truth to it, but that was also creating another trap that wasn't helping anyone. So what's your take on that kind of middle ground? Is there a place for vaccines at all? Or is it just big no to it all? I'd love to hear your take.
I wish we could trust any of these companies that are manufacturing these vaccines, most of which are manufactured in China as arms or wings of the actual GlaxoSmithKline, Merck Pharmaceuticals, Bayer Pharmaceuticals, et cetera.
Yeah.
And therefore we can't trust them. That's really unfortunate, but their track record is egregious. Their track record in terms of injury, lying, fraud, false advertising is billions of dollars in damages that they've been convicted for. So if we could have somebody we could trust, great, then we could actually have a conversation and develop a strategy that was sensible. And I know a lot about this area because of years of working with Dr. Hitt down in Tijuana, who is one of the world's leading virologists, and in my opinion, the world's leading virologist of his time. And Dr. Hitt, what an amazing human being. What he knew about vaccines died with him, but he knew a lot and what could actually really help people. We also did at Dr. Hitt's clinic, we also did ozone, every kind of ozone, but mostly autohemolytic ozone with a German machine where they take a little bit of your blood out. I think it was a pint. Then they ozonate that, and then they put that blood back in. And that was very, very effective with all different kinds of different conditions. And it was just interesting that he had to be in Tijuana. He couldn't be in the US. He couldn't definitely not be in Australia. He couldn't be in any Western country because there's too much of a grip by big pharma. So the problem is it's not even the vaccine concept. It's the corruption of big pharmaceutical industry because of the money. There's so much money. There's all you have to do is follow the money. You'll see, like, for example, Trump has to walk this line where he's like, I know Marla Maples, his ex-wife. She knows everything we know and more. She's a super health fanatic. And so he has to know where we are. But then he also knows the amount of money that's involved in politics for everybody that he's allied with, all the other Republicans, whatever that means, and all the other people, and how much they rely on big pharma money. It's so gnarly, man. It really is. And so he's got to skirt this line. That's why you hear him say it talking one way and then another way and then this way and then that way. And you're like, oh, he's skirting a line. That's what it is. He's trying to please enough people to get through the election so that then he could be like, okay, if you want that vaccine, you take it, but we're not going to mandate it. Whereas many other countries will mandate whatever the thing is that they come up with, as you know, just because they've got handshake deals already done. It's already signed. It's already a done deal. There's no way we're getting out of it. They're going to have the 15 European nation, the EU group. It's going to have the COVID vaccine stamp or whatever, the digital, whatever that's going to happen, that digital passport. And we're going to have to battle the Nazi, where are your papers, please? We're going to have to go through all that again. And this is just the price we're going to pay because we let down our guard and we thought, oh no, we're living there's no more Hitler. There's no more Stalin. There's no more Cold War. This evil never stops. They're always after us in some way, shape, or form.
Interesting times, huh?
So
interesting times. Wow.
But it's the time I was born for this. I mean, I'm cool with whatever's going on. I mean, I did enough traveling. I'm good. I could stay at home the rest of my life. I'm absolutely fine with this forest right here. There's plenty to see here and plenty, and that's kind of where we have to be. I don't want to be, airports are not good for your health. And I don't want to be in a situation where like, you don't get this jab, you don't fly. It's like, sorry, dude, I flew my whole life. You don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. David, is there anything else you want to gift our listeners with? Any wisdom, anything else you're sharing, you're vibing off before we
I'll tell you
something
really cool. In all the travels that I've been doing all over the world, one of my favorite spots is Iceland. And we did a film a year ago in Iceland. We've been editing it this whole time. We just finished it like a week ago. We just launched it like a week ago. And the film is called 1111 Iceland, which is a very positive message for the world. It's seemingly so timely. You'll see in the testimonies, you hit the webpage, 1111iceland.com, 4 1s, and then iceland.com.
Great.
And check that out and have a look at our film. It's really an interesting investigation into the gorgeous, almost surreal, scintillating imagery of Iceland with the very key messages of our time, but in a positive way. It's really uplifting because all of this stuff is really actually very positive. It's very positive. It's like the corruption's coming to light. We have to now deal with it. We have to look at it. The plan that evil has is coming to light. So we have to deal with it. And that's beautiful. And then to have things that you can do in your life every day is what Iceland 1111 is about. It's about just having those things you can be like, oh, I could be activating this. I could be activating that. And we get into one of my favorite lessons in there is noble living. And that's what we've been doing here, is accumulating in this region every single tree I can get my hands on, every plant that I can get my hands on, that I can grow in this ecosystem that can survive the winter. That's super fun. And the winters are really brutal here. It's like minus 40, super intense. I mean, we had snow, like, it's the best. But we're within, the last time it snowed here was about 7 weeks ago. So not that long ago. Or it's like that. And that's kind of neat. That's so neat, you know, because you just, when the spring finally comes, you're just like, oh, but to have all the plants in this ecosystem that we can grow here. So we have all these food plants. That's what we call noble living. Also, the directive of thinking your next generation and descendants beyond that, and 7 generations in the future. On this land, I've dumped easily 6 tons of rock dust, easily, maybe more, and it's spread all through the forest, all around. So years from now, this spot, people will be like, what the heck's going on with the soil here? Like, what is this? Even 1,000 years from now, 6 tons of rock dust, a lot just up here. That's a lot.
Wow.
And, you know, so that kind of thinking, and then also activating right below here, there's a beautiful spring in our garden that we created, we activated, and somehow it's just interesting how that all came to be. And I can be watering, or I can be hanging out in my garden and planting something, and I can just go get a bucket and go scoop out of that spring and dump it on the new plant. And just getting those, that's such the most important message. We call that noble living. And eating wild food is part of noble living. Being part of your ecosystem, having communion with the animals in your ecosystem is noble living. Knowing the mushrooms and being able to eat them and consume them from your environment and get the medicine from them in your environment is noble living. And that's a big part of 1111 Iceland.
Wow. Can't wait to check it out. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so excited about it.
Such a pleasure. I love you. Love your work. And thank you for your inspiration and your empowerment and helping everyone else become empowered themselves. It's really beautiful.
Thank you so much, bro.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you to connect.
And big love to that side of the world. I think one day I will reincarnate in Perth, Australia. That's
we got to get you back over here. I remember
I love it there.
Some great talks and hangouts you had down at Samudra, down in Margaret River, Dunsborough area, which were memorable, beautiful moments. So hope to get you back down here sometime, or we'll be over that side of the world sometime. You know, we love getting over there. Yeah, track me down. You guys should track us down where, especially if I'm in Hawaii. That's not too far. I think we're off on Maui.
Okay, so it basically, you know, I'm half the year here and half the year there in the future. That's what my life's going to look like. I'm going to get to. I didn't know when that was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen sometime, and now I think it's happening. So cool. if you're coming this way, hopefully Hawaii will be the destination we meet at, or here. Either way.
Which brings me to Pluma. Big shout out to Pluma, who hooked this up. So she's living on Maui now, so that's our kind of
good for her.
I
love Pluma. She's the best ever.
The best. Well, David, much love
to her for sure.
I will. Be well.
Thanks, bro.
Take care.
Okay, have the best day ever.
You
Cheers,
too.
everybody.
See ya.
Aloha.